Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Trust you had a good weekend. Now, Sub-Saharan Africa, Ethiopia. The attacks in Ethiopia seem to be even more serious than previously thought. That's the BBC's Mary Harper. Amhara's deputy security chief tells the BBC many places were targeted, including police and regional party headquarters and government buildings. The Ethiopian army chief was killed in Addis Ababa as the government says it thwarted a coup. He was shot by his bodyguard in what the government of Africa's second most populous country said was an assassination related to the attempted coup. They are saying the situation in the Amhara region is currently under full control by the federation government in collaboration with the regional government. Amhara has been racked by unrest for the past 3 years, as we know. Conflicts have erupted in Ethiopia since Abiy assumed office last year and began political and economic reforms. Federation of more than 80 ethnic groups. He was seen to be wearing a military uniform, Abiy, and was on national TV praising the army and urging them to keep their unity. Attempts to overthrow the president of Ethiopia's Amhara region has failed, he said, but gunshots were heard in Bahir Dar and in Addis Ababa. Mini coup or something bigger, very worrying reports from Ethiopia. Sudden internet shutdown fuels rumours. According to a Twitter handle, Kabdi Nasir, the Ethiopian government has accused Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince MBS and Egypt's Al-Sisi and UAE's MBZ of funding and training Amhara rebels. I take you back and when he first came on the scene, and I said, he's one of the only people who's sketching out a new African political horizon. 90 days into his term, I said it represented the most consequential arrival of an African politician on the African stage since Mandela walked out of prison, blinking in the sunlight, and constructed his rainbow nation. Ethiopia is one of the world's brightest economies in terms of GDP. So it's a very tricky situation. I gave some comments to Bloomberg where I said, he ran ahead of everybody's expectations in terms of what he's proposing on the economic side. But at the same time, 3 million IDPs in Ethiopia, more than most of the other countries combined. And it had not popped over the radar. He'd managed to sort of overwhelm it with his velocity. But now we'll have to keep a very keen eye on what happens. A contiguous area of Africa, 2/3 the size of the EU, is currently cut off from the rest of the world due to internet shutdowns. That's Sudan 20 days, Ethiopia 10 hours. African companies are expanding across the continents as the economist colonialism fragmented the continent and linked its economies to imperial capitals rather than to each other. That legacy locked many businesses into national silos. Today, big European and American multinationals still dominate markets from logistics to soft drinks. African firms have announced $72 billion of foreign direct investments in new projects on the continent this decade, according to FDI Markets. Pan-African dream lives on. 2/3 of African firms surveyed by McKinsey in 2017 plan to enter new countries in the region in the next 5 years, compared with half of foreign multinationals in Africa. According to the Boston Consulting Group, the 30 biggest African companies operated in an average of 16 of the continent's countries last year, twice as many as in 2008. Business leaders flit between megacities aboard Ethiopian Airlines, which flies to 36 African states. Dangote, a Nigerian cement baron, has ventured into 10 countries. Dangote Group has overtaken Lafarge Holcim as the largest cement producer in sub-Saharan Africa. The combined economy of Africa's 54 countries is smaller than that of France. OCP Group, a Moroccan phosphate producer, created a sub-Saharan African subsidiary in 2016 by investing in soil research, microcredit and logistics. It hopes to turn subsistence farmers into commercial growers and buyers of its phosphate fertilizer. Firms with a toehold in many places and sectors like Dangote Group or ShopRite are less exposed to a setback in any one of them. Zimbabwe leader Mnangagwa wants a new currency and an IMF loan in a revival bid. Seek financing from the IMF and may even consider a Eurobond offering as the struggling economy emerges from almost 2 decades of isolation. It is necessary that we have our own currency. I have faith that we'll achieve that even before the end of the year, by the first quarter of next year. And then lots of detail. He met with Felipe Nyusi, saying we're weak on the financial side, looking for electricity from Cahora Bassa hydropower, saying that the state, the Zimbabwean military, held in that platinum project that Afreximbank was trying to unlock with the Russians. They're saying the army is no longer a shareholder. And then saying that 2 years ago they produced 18 metric tons of gold. Last year it increased to about 33 tons, and output will grow to 40 tons this year. 4 years' time, plan is to reach 100 tons of gold. The point I'm making is there's a correlation between inflation and revolutionary conditions. And as Yuval said, money is accordingly a system of mutual trust, and not just any system of mutual trust. Money is the most universal and most efficient system of mutual trust ever devised. It's going to be difficult for him to get over that hurdle. Armed robbers steal 500 loaves of bread in Zimbabwe. Focus on Africa. Zimbabwe stockpiling weapons as strike season looms. Weapons include more than 4,000 AK-47 rifles, assorted pistols, 22,000 AK magazines, 5,000 mortar bombs, and millions of rounds of ammunition. Such is the case of 7.62 times 51mm tracers acquired for machine guns to improve accuracy in hitting targets within a range of 1,500 meters. We're just keeping track with the latest policing trends and public order management systems. Doesn't sound good, does it? The Kariba Dam has towered over one of Africa's mightiest rivers for 60 years, forming the world's largest reservoir and providing reliable electricity to Zambia and Zimbabwe. But the flow on the Zambezi River has dwindled to a third of what it was a year ago. The Kariba Dam has been absolutely essential for that region. The challenge is the future doesn't look like the past. Then we've learnt Zimbabwe and Zambia chose General Electric and Power Construction Corp of China to build a $4 billion hydropower project straddling their border. How's that going to work? Decline in Zambia's reserves is worrying. Government should quickly bring the IMF on board. It's rather inevitable. South African all shares up 11.77% this year. Dollar versus rand, look at that rally, 14.248. Egyptian pound 16.7. EGX 30 plus 7.53% in 2019. Nigerian all share minus 5.02% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange down 4.62% year to date. This is an indication of the Tanzanian stock market's confidence in the country's economic prospects. That's from Aiden Yakuze. If you've never seen this interview I did with Maria João Lopo de Carvalho about Louis de Camões and her book, which followed his 16th century journey from Portugal to Macau, please have a listen. FX reserves were down 9.2% to $9.153 billion. 5.82 months of import cover from 10.083 billion. That's a decrease of $930 million. There was a Eurobond repayment in that of $750 million. In 2018, total imports were 1.76 trillion shillings, while total exports were just 37.6% of that figure at 662.7 billion. And in that ratio, you understand why you've got to have a strong shilling. Yields on the 10-year Eurobond and 30-year Eurobond declined to 6.8% and 8%, so that's following on that, Wizard of Oz moment in the markets. Improving diaspora remittances have increased cumulatively by 6.1% in April 2019 to $991.2 million from $858.6 million. Private sector credit growth still is anemic. Nairobi All Shares up 4.93% year to date. Safaricom market cap $10.66 billion, EPS 1.58, price earnings ratio 7.184. Kengen market cap $363.6 million, EPS 1.2, price earnings 4.95. BAT market cap $495 million, price earnings 12.362, dividend yield 8.8089%. NSE 20 down 6.58%. And if you've got to the end of this podcast, you've got to watch this guy who was filmed on The Nation. When you catch me like a rat on the highway, like a rat on the highway, meet the man who told the NTSA to stop highway rat arrests. Thank you for stopping by.